Hello.
Hi, Path.
How are you doing, Gabby? You good?
Good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
I am very, very excited for what's coming next.
I know it is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's 4 o'clock, so we can probably kick off.
Let's go for it. Those that are just joining, welcome, welcome, welcome. Right, Gabby, over to you. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, fantastic. So, welcome everyone to our Women in Tech Talk. We are so excited, and if you've joined a few minutes early, you would have heard Puff's already excitedness about this particular topic. It's not only a topic that is particularly close to the hearts of everyone at Three-Sided Cube, I would say, but for us personally, Puff and myself, this is a really important topic, and we are so excited to be here talking to you all today, and actually that we have such an incredible lineup of panelists that are going to be here sharing their personal experiences and advice with everyone. So very excited. But just before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that we've actually opened up the engagement wall. So please do head to the live chat function. Maybe pop in your reasons why you've joined today, where you're joining from. We'd really love to hear from you. So please do use that facility throughout. But before we do any of that, I thought maybe we introduce ourselves and then we'll run through the agenda. So I'm Gabby. I head up client success at Three-Sided Cube. I am the lucky one who is responsible for finding the awesome, impactful projects which align with our mission to change millions of lives for the better. And I get the privilege of guiding our clients through the development process to ensure it's a successful and long-lasting relationship. I'm going to hand over to my wonderful colleague, Puff. Could you please introduce yourself to everyone here as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for those of you that don't know me, my real name is Sophia, but everyone calls me Puff. And I'm part of the furniture at Three-Sided Cube. I've been around for a few years now. And I get to work with Gabby and some of the wider team in terms of client success. So we, as Gabby very beautifully articulated, we get to find those incredible, impactful projects that really give us a reason at Three-Sided Cube to get out of bed each morning to make sure that we are creating that positive impact and changing millions of lives for the better. So whilst Gabby has the privilege of doing that in the UK, I am on US soil, so don't be fooled by that British accent. I am over here in the US. And for those of you out there who want to know a little bit more about Three-Sided Cube, we should probably give you a very brief intro to who we are as a team and what we do. And as we've both, I think, said in our intros, Gabby, our mission is to change millions of lives for the better. Okay. And what do we mean by that? We want to work on those projects that have a positive impact out in the world. And essentially, we do that as a team, just shy of 100 people now globally. We do that through building or by building what we call tech for good. So technology that has that positive impact that we're craving. Okay. So other words, it's bespoke software, mobile apps, websites, platforms, voice skills. There's lots of different forms that tech can have. But I think it's actually important that we all pause for a second and remember that the technology itself is agnostic. Okay. And I think, especially in today's world and unfortunately the media that exists, sometimes technology can actually get a bad reputation and a bad name. And I think what is important is we do need to remember it's not the technology itself, right? It's the reasons behind why people have designed and developed it in a certain way. And I think what we're very, very good at Three-Sided Cube is pausing for a second and trying to ensure that whatever we design, whatever we create, whatever we're bringing to life for our clients, it is having the right impact. Okay. It is having that positive impact by changing millions of lives for the better. And I think, as hopefully some of you in the audience know by attending some of our previous events, that these events, these Tech for Good talks, are really there to shine a light on the brilliant, the positive examples of tech for good out there globally. Okay. And today we have a very special topic. We are very, very focused on women in tech. And, you know, it is personally, for both Gabby and I know for all of the panelists, a very important topic. And it's something, we've all faced, being women in tech ourselves, right? But what I wanted to do is pause for a second, and we have a very quick video. I think it's like a minute, 2 minutes long, that kind of illustrates some of the numbers around what women in tech are facing today. Okay, and whilst I will say this, there has been a significant improvement over the years. I hope that you'll agree with me at the end of the video. There's definitely more that can be done. Okay, there is definitely room for improvement. And I think the best place to start is to listen to some of the incredible experiences, some of the incredible insights, and some of the incredible advice that the panelists will be giving today. So without further ado, let's hand over and let's see this video.
Thank you. I think that's a really powerful way to kind of start off the conversation, actually, because it kind of shows you that it's quite shocking, some of the stats of where we are now, but there's some quite positive moves to make a real difference in that. So without further ado, let's get you introduced to the panelists. Just before we do that introduction, I'm going to welcome everyone to turn on their cameras and get ready for the panel. Whilst our wonderful panelists do that, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are aiming for about an hour in total of this session. So we will be leaving plenty of time for questions at the end. One of the things to do as you go through is please use that direct chat facility to pop in those questions. I think you'll find it on the right-hand side. And what we'll do is make sure there's plenty of time at the end to get any of your burning questions answered by our wonderful group of panelists. So without further ado, I can see some of our panelists have joined. So hopefully everyone does have their cameras on by now. But we are going to start kicking off and doing some welcomes and introductions for this fantastic conversation. So firstly, thank you everyone for joining us today for this conversation. Hopefully from the introduction, you will get a sense of Puff and I's passion for this particular topic. But I must say I've had the privilege of talking to everyone already, and I am so excited to get chatting to you all. So to kick things off, what would be great is everyone could do a short introduction about themselves and their role in their organization at the moment, and then we can get into the juicy kind of conversation. So I'm going to whiz around my screen now. Dana, you are top of my screen. So could you kick us off with a short introduction about yourself and your organization, please?
Sure. Excited to be with everybody. So my name is Dana Snyder. I'm the founder and CEO of Positive Equation, going into year 6 in my business, which is very exciting. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I work with nonprofits on their social media marketing. So a lot on the paid ad strategy and building and launching monthly giving programs. So soup to nuts, everything from branding to the website design to launching the program. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. And I love speaking and teaching on all things social, and doing that also through my podcast, Missions to Movements.
Thank you, Dana. Very excited to be learning more about you and what you do. Grace, you are next on my screen. So please, could you do a little introduction, please?
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Really happy and excited to be here. So my name is Grace Murugi. I'm an avid digital enthusiast. I've been in the corporate space for like the last 14 years or so, with experience in consumer packaged goods, telco, a little bit of politics actually, and now working for the international NGO world, delivering digital strategies. So I'm really happy to be here, and I look forward to engaging with everybody today.
Thank you so much, Grace. And next on my screen is Hannah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hannah Atride. I am head of digital products at Marie Curie. So we are a charity trying to ensure that everyone has the best in end-of-life care. And in my role, I look after our main website, our 13 microsite applications, and also how we can scale, support and scale some of our services digitally as well, so we can reach more people and help more people. Previous to my time in the third sector, I worked in finance for 10 years. So I had a definite step change. Some of the challenges are similar, some are very different within the sector. But technology for me is something that is a huge enabler in what I do and what the ambition of the charity I work for does as well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Stacey.
Hello, everybody. So I am Stacey Celestin. I am a co-founder and the CEO of MyBabo. So MyBabo is a social political app. It's home for the next generation of change makers. We're empowering everyone to be the most engaged, informed, and effective. We're anti-algorithm, culturally inclusive, and nonpartisan. Our motto is your voice, your vote, your village. While other social media apps profit from divisiveness, our foundation is on the belief that we can go fast alone, but we can go further together.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. So to kick things off, I think a good starting point is to really dive a little bit deeper into how you all started out in tech. What experiences it was that led you to technology as a career? We've seen some kind of concerning statistics around STEM and what it is that that kind of gap, I suppose, for women to get into careers like yourself. So just interested to pick that up a little bit and have a bit more of a conversation. Hannah, I'm going to start with you. You mentioned finance and then into the for good space. So just wanted to pick that up with you and just hear a little bit more about how you started in tech.
Sure. I mean, is it fair to say I fell into it? So I did a sports science degree at university. So I guess growing up, I actually spent very little time using technology. And I was of the old school MSN dial-up, sit for hours on the modem. That, oh goodness, that dial-up tone. That used to be my life at weekends. You know, who can I chat to? Who I see every single day anyway. So, you know, that was kind of my first foray into tech. And then I was graduating and I needed to do something. So I actually did the Marks and Spencer's graduate scheme, and for some reason, out of sheer luck, I was put in their food marketing team, and it was right at the point of them building out their website and products online. So I got really involved, you know, in that. Oh goodness, sorry for everyone who doesn't live in the UK, but that's not just M&S. That's M&S prawn sandwich or whatever it is. That was all from my team, not my idea, but it was very much about how we scale marketing outside of stores. So it was kind of their first foray into not only digital marketing, but actually product online. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved the pace. I loved the instant interaction. I loved the engagement that you could see. You know, I loved that you could put something out and it not work and it doesn't matter, you know, and that's something that I really truly believe in technology. Not everything works that you try, you know, and that's something that I like to, well, hopefully I tell my team, you know, keep trying. I hate the adage fail fast, but it's okay to fail fast, you know. I like to do things that don't always work. And I was definitely given that as my first kind of foray into technology, which I think kept me interested, if I'm totally honest. And then I met someone who said, come and work for me, who was a hedge fund manager. And I thought, you know what, why not? And actually, when we're talking about women in tech, I was the only woman in that whole team, in the marketing and technology team. And I was the only woman in that whole team for almost 8 years until I got to the top of that team and was able to recruit into that team. So that was kind of my ambition. I'm going to stay until I can get someone else in here who looks like me and talks like me and sounds like me and does like I do. So yeah, I worked in a hedge fund for 10 years and I loved it. But it was a male dominated industry. It still is. It was very much about having to prove myself. I'll be honest, there were lots of testing times and it was very much, will she fail? Could she stick it out? Those kinds of things. Yeah, and then when I felt like I'd achieved it and I proved to everyone that I could do it and myself, I thought I'm going to go and do something that makes me feel better. So I moved sector, and yeah, I moved into the third sector. And actually, what I've seen within the third sector is how technology can really help people, and that for me is why I work for a charity still and why I work in technology, because I see every single day how putting in place something that is empowering, something that is engaging, something that can offer support and where you can get feedback, all of those things that technology can do for good, I see every single day. And that's why I keep coming to work.
I love that. Like, I love that story of that 360, even how you kind of, you say fell, I would say engineered luck to get your Marks and Spencer's first opportunity. And for anyone who isn't in the UK, I mean, Hannah has definitely undersold how iconic that slogan is. I mean, those prawn sandwiches and those adverts are incredible. So for anyone who wants to check it out, you should definitely check it out. But in terms of those experiences and what you kind of really loved around the fast-pacedness and the kind of excitedness, and I think failing fast is something that's really interesting to then your kind of experience working in such a male-dominated industry where eyes were on you, kind of expecting you to fail, but you using that as kind of a really key driver to kind of get where you needed to is really, really interesting. And leaving that legacy of bringing more women into the organization is just amazing.
And I guess as well, I don't want to undersell that time in the hedge fund, because I learned a lot about tech. I learned a lot about digital as well. I learned a lot about user experience. I learned a lot about systems. I soaked it all up for sure. And actually, sometimes I go back to those things now, when you're weighed down by kind of process or, governance structures and things. Actually, it's really important for me to keep thinking about the user. Okay, how do we get this message out there? How do we get this service to them? What can we do to break through that? So actually, there's a lot to be said for kind of marrying the two worlds sometimes.
Absolutely. And we often say it on these Tech for Good talks for anyone who's joining, we like a diverse panel that come from different backgrounds, because there is something so powerful about sectors actually talking and those experiences being shared across those sectors. And I think you're absolutely right. We can't hide away from the fact that finance makes the world go round. Like, a lot of money is invested in that sector. And particularly when it comes to technology, they're often first because they invest in the software. So we're able to kind of like see how it can be used. And then the responsibility of organizations like all of us on this call is to actually identify how we can use that for good. So definitely having that outward facing kind of role and looking what's happening in the wider sector is super important. Grace, I'm going to come to you because you also work at an INGO. What's your experience in terms of how did you get started in tech, and what did that look like? And are they similar from Hannah's or maybe different?
All right. So for me, I was raised by parents who are engineers. Yeah. And so my mom and dad, Alex and Martha Maina, were both engineers. And so for me, growing up in Kenya, there was always like technology in the house. And I remember like one time, like in the 90s, my dad had this megaphone. Yeah. I think they were called satellite phones back in the day. And it had like a whole aerial. And so like you could make calls around the world. It was really interesting because he was working in the telecommunication space. And so he was able to do that. And Hannah has mentioned something that has just made me laugh because of the dial-up connections. Back in the day, how we were accessing the internet. And you could almost predict like when a call was coming through because there was, things would jumble up. It was so interesting. And so naturally, when I went to high school, I was very curious about technology. And so I started doing like computer studies. Back in the day, they were just called computer studies. And so I was really interested in that. And then, so when I went to campus, I did my computer science degree. And the thing that stands out is that we were actually just 4 women in a class of 20 men. Yeah. And so it was so clear. So like you can't miss class because it's gonna be so clear that you didn't come to class, So that's what happened. And then graduated with my degree in computer science. And back in the day, I think the coolest thing to do was to open a Hotmail email address. And so if you didn't have a Hotmail email address, like what world are you living in if you don't have like a Hotmail email address? And then later Yahoo came into play. And so we all had Yahoo email addresses. And then back in the day, like Gmail was this like exclusive club. And so if you're only invited into, so if you don't have somebody inviting you into Gmail, it was really interesting. So then I started my career as a web developer. So developed websites for quite some time. And these are the days when we used to hard code. Yeah. Not these days where people are like getting templates and then your site comes up like really 20-minute websites. I'm like, whoa, guys have a really easy time now. So we were like coding, like hard coding sites in like Notepad, and then you go and view that on a browser. So it was really different times. And then one of the questions that we would get is, fine, we've developed this site. Now, how do we get people to know about it? How do we get people to come onto the site? And that's honestly what launched my digital marketing career. And so I remember the very first campaign I ran was a Google search campaign. And back in the day, there were no tutorials. There was like no class you could go to and attend and learn how to do that. So we would go on YouTube and search, so you like click here and then you see what happens, and then it's just magical. And then you click something else and it was just ridiculous. So I remember seeing my first Google search campaign. I was very excited. I went telling my brothers, you won't believe what I did today. And that's how my career launched. And then much later, Facebook came into play, and now we were running ads on Facebook. And then running ads on Twitter. I remember it took a bit of time for us to run ads on Twitter. So then now we were doing that. And that's basically how my digital marketing career was launched. So then after 2 years of doing that in a small consultancy firm, I transitioned into the agency. At the time when I was transitioning, I was doing my master's. And so the thesis I was writing was the influence of digital marketing on companies in Kenya. And so with that, I transitioned into the agency. I worked at Scan Group. So that's WPP Scan Group for 2 years. And I was handling consumer packaged goods. So that's Unilever. My biggest clients are actually Unilever and what do we call this? Kimberly-Clark. So then I was running digital campaigns for those 2 organizations across Africa. So that was a lot of fun. And that's when telco came calling. So I transitioned from that into telco. So I handled digital marketing for Safaricom, which is East Africa's biggest telecommunication company, running a lot of campaigns for M-Pesa especially, which is a mobile money platform. And then from there, the INGO world came calling, and I was like, I really want to put my digital skills for impact work. And so when Oxfam came calling, it was a natural yes. I was like, let's definitely do it. And that's what I've been doing for the last 9 months, actually. So I'm still new on the role. And I think what I was really excited when I was just listening to Hannah, because the thing that happens in the tech world is that change is the only constant thing. Yeah. So, for example, like everything that's happening on Twitter right now, if someone had told us that, that say last year time, like now the changes we've seen were there, would have probably not believed it. Yeah. So the change is therefore like the only constant in tech and digital. And so the thing that we need to do is to ask ourselves, and I keep asking myself this question, like, how adaptable am I? So how is my adaptability quotient? How quickly can I be able to just transition? Because I've run digital campaigns where the only thing we're doing is like, say, a Twitter only strategy. Yeah. But then now, is that something that we would be able to consider? So when it comes to things like now the big conversation is about AI and the metaverse and Web3, so how do we integrate and, how do we join that conversation and figure out like how to just go about it and make sure that whatever work we're doing is relevant for the time that we're in. Because when I joined the internet, we were on what we used to call Web 1. Yeah. So oh my gosh, Web 1 was so different. You guys remember this? It looked so different. I think I saw a screenshot of something the other day and I almost collapsed. I was like, oh my gosh. So, now we're in Web 2 and things are, a little bit more friendlier. User interfaces are so friendly and, so intuitive. And there are so many browsers to choose from today. And so now when we move into Web 3, what is that going to look like? So in a lot of companies and conversations are taking place to sort of figure out like what's going on there. And so I would say like the thing about tech, you have to be so ready for change. That muscle has to be like really, really strong, because like next year time like this, I think we'll be talking about totally different platforms. So for example, one of the things that we keep discussing with my team is, are we jumping onto Mastodon as an example, as a channel to pass our communication through, or are we staying on the channels that have been tried and tested? So those are the conversations, and just it's exciting. I would say it's very exciting work.
I mean, wow, what an incredible story and journey you've been on. I mean, one, I love that you were just introduced at such a young age to engineering as such a normal concept. That's just incredible. But to start as a developer and then kind of be introduced into digital marketing and go on this kind of wider journey, and wow, Oxfam are so lucky to have you, and it's just great to know those incredible skills are being used for good. Is really great. But that point around change and the fast-pacedness of the industry, I think, is something that's definitely going to be a theme as we go through today. And I think it's really fair, for anyone thinking of edging into careers, that's something that is a big part of this. It's also one of the things personally I love the most, because I never want to stop learning, and it gives me the perfect excuse to constantly be educating and re-educating myself, because when you think you know it, something new is around the corner that you don't know, so you have to keep up to pace, and that is really, really fascinating. So thank you so much, Grace, for that wonderful introduction. Stacey, I'm gonna push over to you now as a co-founder. What was that journey like for you? How did you start in tech, and was it with My Balbo, or was it before that? We'd love to hear more about your story.
No, that's a great question. I have to say to Hannah, scoot over. I'm going to fall right behind you because I fell into tech as well. Make room. No, I have been fortunate enough that my co-founders are my siblings, my brother and my sister. So again, we're a family-owned company, a socio-political app, and it came in 2020. But before I talk about like what was the catalyst for it, was we always had an appetite for it. Public service in some way. My brother, he is a global musician. He used to tour the world, and he used to focus on underrepresented communities across the globe to kind of highlight what was happening in their communities, from social issues to LGBTQ plus and so forth. My sister, she has been in the government for a while, making the connections between foreign entities in the Navy, trying to ensure that all things go well. And then you have myself. I was in the government for more than a decade. I ended with Homeland as the highest ranking African American on the West Coast. And before that, I was with USAID. I handled all of the foreign service officers across the globe. So I was responsible for that. So I say all that not to pat our backs, because we're very humble. And I feel like shy is saying that, but like more to say like there's always an appetite of empathy and public service for us. So when 2020 came around, we had the pandemic. We had political and social unrest. It was reaching its head. Whether you lived here or not, you could feel what was happening in the States in America. And at that time, one of my co-founders, my brother, came to us and said, "Hey, I have an idea, right? A way to create a connect, because there's a lot of disconnect and dissonance right now." And that was my Bible. It's like, how do we ensure that people can start having real conversations, show a level of empathy, and then holding our politicians accountable? That conversation happened late 2020. And the next thing you know, we said, okay, let's hire a dev team. Again, we're non-technical people. I say non-technical like that now because after almost 3 years, boy, we could probably run a whole dev team at this point. We got thrust into it. So I say that to anyone who's thinking like, I can't do it. You don't have to have a technical background. You just need to know who to hire and what you're looking to do. So we did that, hired a really great team. They created a prototype. We had focus groups. Fast forward again, 6 months later, we've raised a nice chunk of money. Now today we're live. So I will put it out there for anyone. I always say like technology is always around. Either I always say change or convenience, right? It kind of could be one of the same. Either I want to make life convenient for myself, or I want to get a room, or I want to get a car, or I want to make social and some change, political or so forth. So if that's the catalyst for your technology, you're good to go. Those are the ones seems to be the unicorns, as I would say. But in saying all of that, coming into technology, it's a beautiful world to be in. It's one thing to be on the outside of it, using technology as I can't remember Hannah or Grace said like these, like Grace, as you said, people don't code anymore. They just use a template, correct? It's like I can use Wix website and create a website. Now, like I'm a web developer versus actually how to code it. So being in the midst and learning all of that gives you a certain level of interest and experience that you couldn't have if you didn't do it or thrust yourself into it. So that is my spiel for my Bible and how I came into this place.
Amazing though. I mean, again, wow, what an inspirational family. And to take such a real world problem and kind of use technology to solve it is just, wow, it's Three-Sided Cube's love language. So we're big fans already in terms of that. But I think, everything you're saying around kind of that accessibility now that technology has for people that are interested is really, really key. And I would echo that it is a fantastic environment to be in. I have only been here for 3 years in technology. It's also not my background, not that I'm going to talk about myself, but it's been such an inclusive environment to be in. And I found the sector to be so incredibly welcoming and open and sharing those experiences. So absolutely couldn't echo that enough. And Dana, for you, as another founder and CEO of your own business, what was that journey for you in incorporating tech? And was that kind of the driver to start your own business, or did that come from kind of a different angle?
Yeah, when you going back to like dial up, if we remember how Facebook started, my journey started in social. And so to just like give a date myself. So I graduated from college in December of 2010. And so remember in 2007 was when Facebook switched or was started. Actually, no, it was still .edu. It was still you had to have a .edu email address to access Facebook. So it still had not become public. So as I was graduating, that was changing and it was opening up to businesses. And so we were still sending faxes for my internships back then, which is wild to think about. And yeah, I was working at like a radio station as an intern. And so naturally, when I graduated, I had a degree in advertising and PR. And that slowly was turning into also that means you do social media, right? And everybody was just kind of figuring out what that meant. And so I worked for a nonprofit, and then I moved to New York City in 2013, and I was 22, 23, and I fell into a tech job, quite literally. I flew to like a crazy story for anybody. I saw a couple people who are looking for like their next role. I flew to New York City and I had all these interviews lined up, and a nor'easter hit. And if anybody doesn't know what a nor'easter is in New York City, it's a blizzard. It's cold. Companies shut down. There's curfews a lot of times where you can't leave. So all of my interviews were canceled. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm planning to move here. I'm going to be jobless. And there was a sports business journal, like digital conference at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. And I found it by Googling. I was like, sports conferences, New York City. And I was like, I'm showing up. So I showed up, and I sure could not afford that $1,600 ticket, whatever it was at the time. But I pulled, they still had then like the printout chunks of everybody who was attending the conference on the table, and I swiped it. And I went downstairs to the lobby of the hotel, and I was like, I have to know someone here. I knew one person because I had been writing for fun. Please, no one Google search this, and I hope it doesn't show up.
Everyone Google search it.
Oh my God, a sports blog called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of This Weekend in Sports for this guy. And so he was there. The founder of this company was there. And I was like, hey, I write for your website by chance. And he's like, yeah, I'll totally bring you up. So he walked me into a session, and a gentleman named Dave Nugent was on the stage, and he was talking about working with NASCAR and PGA Tour and Fox Sports. And I was like wide-eyed. And so I had zero idea of how websites or mobile apps or second screen experiences were built. But I had the drive to approach him and say, I'll figure it out. I didn't know what. I remember like my first meetings at the company, they were like CMS. And I was like, what is this CMS? What are all these abbreviations stand for? What is Jason? It was so funny. So it was a big learning curve for sure. And then I really loved the social digital aspect. So I ended up going to another agency focusing on that, and then really wanted the focus of this talk, Tech for Good. My nonprofit roots started to come back in. I read a book. Actually, I have it here. Good is the New Cool by Afdel Aziz and Bobby Lopez. Yes. I read the book, and it made me quit my job, quite literally. And it's like, I don't know, something like overcame me. And I was like, I don't want to do all of this for these massive companies. And social impact and purpose was not a thing back then as it is now. And so a lot has changed. But so I left that company. I remember pacing on 5th Avenue and 28th and being like, I'm just going to walk up and quit. And my boss was like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm going to start my own company with no clients and move across the country to Los Angeles. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind. So started as a social agency, and now I do a lot, all in the nonprofit sector with teaching and consulting. And I, just like so many of us were saying on adaptability and change and learning and growth, is I love wanting to try and be on the pulse of what's happening next. And so like the conversations around the metaverse, like I was the first where I bought it as a Christmas present, the VR headset, the Oculus Christmas present for my husband. But it was me wanting to like get it, right? I wanted to like understand like, what is this world? I want to test all these apps and these experiences. And so, yeah, it's been a wild journey, but that's kind of how I ended up here.
It's amazing. And you know, it's so interesting because often as women, I think it's something that we do. We say we fell into this, and we've kind of all said it. And I would 100% say it if I was a panelist on this. I'd say, oh, I didn't really choose it. I kind of fell into it. But there's so much drive and determination. And I think that's like clearly come through in your intro, Dana, is that, you know, you have to go after these things, and to somewhat more so, I think, in this industry where it's such a huge divide. But wow, just that story of how you kind of like swiped that list and found that, and then the kind of acceleration of journey, but also how it does show you that one book or that one moment can kind of change everything for you.
100%.
Repositioning. And I absolutely love that in terms of inspiring people to do something for good. I'm going to go over to Puff, because Puff, you have been nodding away. You have been having like a whale of a time listening to all of these kind of introductions. And I know you also are a really key part of Cube, and you've been a woman in tech for a long time in this company. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, your experience and how you started in technology?
Well, do you know what? Very similar in that I fell into it. So if I'm speaking really honestly, my background's in advertising and marketing. Like I worked in advertising and I loved it. But I think I just got to a point where I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I shouldn't say this term, but I almost feel like I sold my soul to the devil, because you work your way up in particular industries, and you get used to certain salaries and the perks that come with jobs. So actually trying to shimmy out of one industry and get into another is really quite difficult, and usually there's like some kind of catalyst for change. And for me, honestly speaking, it was a life stage change for me. So I relocated, or had relocated, from London to Bournemouth, a couple of hours away on the train. And I was commuting to London every day, and sat on a train for 5 hours every day, or traveling for 5 hours every day, was not a good use of my time. And I just got engaged. I knew at some point I wanted to have family. So I just needed to move. So I moved from advertising into a tech agency that were building websites, and realized that was a steep learning curve. And then another life change was I got married, I had my first child. And back then, 10 years ago, or however many years ago now, the opportunity to be flexible and have part-time work at a certain level in an agency just was non-existent, being really honest. There were just, those opportunities didn't exist. And I'd met Duncan, and Duncan had offered me a fantastic opportunity part-time around my firstborn child, and that, I bit his hand off. Like, why wouldn't you? And fast forward 10 years, like, I've learned a lot and I've experienced a lot, and Three Sunny Cube has grown and changed. But yeah, like a lot of the panelists, I did kind of fall into it, and it wasn't forced on me. It was the industry has complemented my life stage, and as that's kind of gone through, which has been absolutely brilliant. And like you, Gabby, and I know a few of you have mentioned it, I love learning, and honestly, every day is a school day in this industry. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. But I will say, Dana, your story of hunting that list down and being ballsy and just going for it, like, that has inspired me, and I really hope it inspires those listening today, because I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but typically women don't tend to do that. So when I hear those stories, I'm like, brilliant. We need to be more like that. We need to be more confident. We need to take those risks. We need to take those leap of faith. Like, it's brilliant. So
and what's crazy, what I would say, like, also for anybody listening, if there's a job you want, it can likely be created. I think one of like the big mistakes is we wait for a job description to be posted. That might be what we want. The second agency job I got, I literally Google searched top PR agencies in New York City, and one popped up. It was Dan Clora's Communications. And I went to their website. There was no jobs that were at the level that I wanted, but I asked for an informational interview because the head of digital looked dope. It was a woman. She had just left People magazine, and I was like fascinated by her. She agreed to meet with me, and super long story short, she told me, she's like, we don't have any jobs available. And I was like, that's okay. I was like, I like where I'm at, but I'm just kind of trying to zuzz out like where I'm going next. The next day, she emailed me and was like, so I told our president about our conversation, and he would like to meet with you tomorrow. Wow. Met with the president. This was all in a week. And then like the next day, they offered me a senior digital strategist position that they had just created. So you just have to, like, if there's something, that you really want to go after, I think if you have the drive, and honestly, the conversation with the president was nothing to do with digital. I saw he had a photo of the New York Rangers. I think it was during playoff season, and I'm a Lightning fan, and the Lightning were also in the playoffs. And so I was just like egging him on about how great the Lightning were and that they were going to like take over and beat the Rangers. And that was literally the majority of our conversation, and talking about other things. And somehow that netted out in a job beyond the salary that I had asked for. So you just, likability, like being real, just being yourself, goes so far.
Absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting point. Another thing that I know I certainly do, but speaking to other women, it's a tendency across us as a whole, is to not really to look at a job description and rule yourself out of it for like one tiny thing, or to be like, oh, I don't know if I can do that kind of thing. And I definitely know in the role that I'm in at Three-Sided Cube, if it wasn't for Puff and Rich kind of harassing me to come to the interview and being, you know, knowing what I was capable of and saying, you should do this, you know, I was in the charity sector, I was in fundraising, it didn't seem like technology felt so far away from that role, I wouldn't have applied for this role, and that would have been a massive mistake, you know, in terms of what I've done in this role and what I've achieved and what I love about this role. It couldn't suit me better. So again, like, I think there's drive, there's backing yourself, there's so many wonderful things coming through in this conversation already, and it does lead me on perfectly to my next question for the panelists. And I kind of want to do like a quick whiz around with your top piece of advice for women that are maybe on this call looking to kind of get into the industry or grow their career, particularly within technology. What's your kind of one top piece of advice that you would give? I'm going to start with Stacey. I'm just going to mix it up a bit and keep you all on your toes. So, Stacey, what's your one piece of advice you'd give for anyone listening today?
I would say the first thing that came to mind when you were saying it was, you know what you know what you don't know, and then you don't know what you don't know. To me, that is a sweet spot. And how do you know what you don't know? It's surrounding yourself around people who are more experienced and willing to teach you. Because you walk around thinking that you can teach yourself, and you can. I think someone made a point about like things happen in IT. I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know these new like updates and so forth. So to continue to surround yourself around experienced people who are willing to like open the doors for you, please do that, because what you don't know is going to hurt you at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that harks back to that. Stay curious, be curious, like find it yourself as well, because I think it's such a fascinating industry. And as everyone said, you know, buy the VR headset, like have a look, or find someone that's got one that you can just have a play with, because it is so fast paced and moving. And Grace, your top piece of advice for anyone that's thinking about moving into the industry.
So what I would say is that the industry has really changed. Yeah. So back in the day, like what I've described in terms of like we had to do a lot of like self-teaching and things like that, it's truly changed. So I think the first thing I would say is pick the niche that you want, because tech is so wide. Like it's a very broad, like when you talk about technology and even when you talk about digital, it's very wide. So I would say like pick the line that you want to sort of zero in on, find somebody you can shadow. And I think a lot of these organizations provide, like, say, unpaid work where you can just shadow somebody and learn, because at the end of the day, experience becomes the best teacher. Yeah. And then right now, there are so many, like, say, digital marketing classes. There are a lot of technology classes. Like even Harvard is offering like free courses that you can be able to take and learn a new skill in technology. And so I think free class would be something that would be able to help. And then of course joining forums like this one. So this is fantastic, because you get to pick up like a lot of learnings and lessons from different people, and also joining like global conversations. Like last year, November, I was able to attend the web summit, and I really loved like the different lessons I picked from that, and it was fantastic. And so I think those things. But I think also specifically for women, the specific thing that I normally tell women, which is what I would have told my younger self, is to just be brave and do it. Because I think sometimes we have all this like, I want to do this, I want to try do this, but we don't actually just take the leap and just do it. So I would say just give it a shot and just get it done. Yeah.
I love that. And also reach out to other women. I think women are so good at giving advice and like providing a sense of security. Like, you know, LinkedIn's a great tool for that. Like message like women that are doing it, be like, ask them for their advice. You know, you've got incredible women on this screen now, and the list is endless of women that are doing it already. So, you know, that bravery to just give it a go, but also to ask. I think some lovely themes coming out. And Hannah, for you,
sorry, Gabby, one more thing. Just there's something I've remembered from what you mentioned earlier. I've hired for several organizations, and what you said earlier is so true. So you'll find like a woman who is 90% qualified for like a role, but then they don't talk about it enough, so most of the time we look at this role and go like, okay, so I don't know the 10%, so I'm not going to apply. And then we'll find a man who's like, say, 30% qualified, and they're so brave, and they're so courageous, and they apply for the role. I remember interviewing interviewing people for a particular role, and we just had this guy come in, and I'm telling you, he sold this product, and I couldn't believe it. And then we had a lady come in and interview for a role, and she undersold what she was doing and what she was capable of doing. And so I've seen that pattern so many times, and I'm like, that's why the thing to tell women is to just be brave and to just be bold and to just go out and go for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think anyone that's also in a recruiting position to be totally aware of that, to support women in bringing it out and understand that their honesty in the things that they need to learn is also a strength. Like, it's a real strength when I'm recruiting for a role. I love people that are transparent around, I might need a bit more support in this role, but I'm eager to learn. And I kind of, what Dana was saying around that drive, I've got that drive to learn. But it's okay to be honest. But I think there's the two sides, being brave, but also in recruiting roles, being aware of those differences between men and women and what they'll do. Hannah, for you, your top piece of advice for anyone looking to move into this industry?
Sure. So I agree with everything that everyone said so far, so I won't go over that. But there's a few things I would say. I think as a woman, you've got a responsibility to make space for other women. I really do. That is something that I advocate in my team at Marie Curie. I'm really lucky our CTO is a woman. Our board is 90% women. And so for me, aligning myself in a place of work that also has those values and really encourages women to drive forward in technology is really important. So for me, making space for other women, aligning yourself with an organization that has those values and shares your values is really key. And the thing for me, I think, is know what you like about technology, know what you're doing in technology. So for me, it's all about the user. I want to reach more people, help more people, empower more people, change more, decision making for people. That's what I like. It's user centric design that I really enjoy, and products that support that. But technology can be so many things. It could be about how a system supports something. It could be about, I don't know, God, so many things, making things easier for people, more convenient for people. So know what you like and make sure that's where you stay, because it's so easy to get lost in this kind of other world of systems and things that fit together that actually might take you away from where you started.
Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely. And making space for other women is so incredibly powerful. It's the one thing we can all do as we move around, is make sure that's a key part. And similarly at Cube, our COO, shout out to Sophie, is a woman, and she is fantastic at making space for other women in the production team, which is one of the hardest spaces for us to find kind of women that want to take up those roles. So yeah, absolutely couldn't agree more. And Dana, you have mentioned drive, and you've told some fantastic stories, and I think you've been totally inspirational to women with your advice already. But I didn't actually ask you the question. So is there a top piece of advice, or is it drive and bravery? What's kind of your big piece of advice there?
I'll go real tactical. You mentioned LinkedIn, and so social's my jam, right? What I would say is you are a thought leader. Think about like 2 or 3 things that you could talk about at great length, and start to post actively on LinkedIn thought leadership pieces, whether it's just posts, and it can be just straight copy, starting a newsletter. Just start to talk about the things that you want to be known for or hired for, and it's going to find you. People are going to want to have conversations with you.
Absolutely. I love that. It's really great. Thank you. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to be picking up a couple of questions that have come through. And one of them was, what was the best professional advice you ever received? And this linked a lot to the question I was going to ask around the biggest learning opportunities. So I think, as women who have been in the industry for a long time and had lots of different experiences that have led them to the experience, what was the best professional advice or learning opportunity that you were kind of given in that role? Grace, I'm going to start with you. You've been kind of in the industry for a long time. Like, in terms of professional advice you were given, is there anything that stands out for you?
The biggest learning opportunity is pushing the boundaries of innovation. So for me, for example, some of the campaigns I've been very privileged to be a part of. The two that stand out are there's a campaign we ran for a Kenyan runner called Eliud Kipchoge, and it made it to become a Twitter case study. So and I think the thing about that is that we were so brave and so bold, and we're like, how do we do something different? Because we're always doing like the same thing. So like when you look at a plan, it's always like a TV, radio, and digital plan. And so this time around, we're like, we're just going to do like a radio and Twitter only plan, so and it was new. It was something that had never been done before, and we're able to get the campaign hashtag Eliud159 onto the global Twitter trend from Kenya. So it was fantastic. We got like 12 billion impressions. It was just next level. And I think the thing about that is that we just were bold, and we thought slightly different, and we tried to innovate and do something that had not been done before. I think the second campaign I can talk about is an app download campaign, and on this one we were working very closely with the Google team, and with that we were able to deliver 3 million downloads in like a record 4 weeks, which had never been done before. And so all these things have won awards and case studies with Google, with Twitter. It's been fantastic. And all of them, I think the foundation is the same. We have to be like really bold, and we have to do things that have not been done before. The other thing that comes to mind actually is one of my bosses when I was at Safaricom gave us this challenge to create like an augmented reality logo from a camera. And let me tell you that it's not anything anyone had ever heard of. And so we called the Google team and we're like, this is what we want to do. And they're like, you guys are crazy, but we're going to talk to a partner who's going to be able to try and see how to do that. And so when Safaricom, this company was turning 20, we had a new logo, and we actually created like an augmented, and it's actually like a really simple solution. So some of this, so when you point your camera at like a space, you're actually able to see the logo through that. And it was like an augmented, like 3D logo. So I think that the biggest learning therefore is the things that are not possible are actually very few. We just need to think about it, find the right solution. And I think one of the mantras I go by is, if somebody says no, I'm just probably not talking to the right person. How do I get to talk to the next person who's going to help? How do I talk to the next person? On and on like that. And we're able to actually just push the boundaries of innovation in the tech and digital space. And so I think that I would say is my biggest learning opportunity. Yeah.
I love that. Pushing those boundaries, but also if someone says no, what's the other route that you can use? What is there other people? Is there another way of selling it? I think is really powerful in terms of the themes of like bravery and boldness and all the kind of wonderful things that have come out from all the areas that we've discussed today. I'm just going to whiz around the rest of the panelists before I do probably like one more question to everyone. So Hannah, from your point of view, the best professional advice or the kind of biggest learning opportunity for you? Is there anything that springs to mind?
Don't over-engineer tech. Don't over-engineer it. Don't try and keep it as close to out of the box. And I don't mean that you can't push the boundaries. I mean the underlying tech will keep updating, will keep needing to move you forward, will keep needing to progress. So whatever you do, keep the tech as simple as possible from a tech stack perspective, and then work on how you market. That would be my biggest piece of advice. Otherwise you end up with something that costs loads of money and keeps needing updating in-house. So yeah,
absolutely. And don't reinvent the wheel. If there's something that does it already, use it. Like, it's absolutely, tech can cost so much money. So yes, again, a fantastic piece of advice there. And Stacey, as someone that went on this journey, you started the business, you've done that, come on, you must have some really powerful professional advice that was given to you, or kind of biggest learning opportunity that you can share.
No, I do have two actually that come to mind where everyone's speaking. These ladies are amazing. So, I'm building off of them in this conversation. One is, if you haven't noticed, like I'm really straight to the point when I talk, is be concise. One thing, one of our advisors and biggest shareholders was get to the point. have an elevator pitch when you're talking about yourself and or your company. Most people want instant gratification and they want you to get to the point because time is valuable to them. So one thing I can tell to anyone in this room who are listening, if you're talking about yourself as a person and you want to get promoted or you want to do things within the sector and or you're talking about your business, have an elevator pitch, 30 seconds or less, what you are, who you are, and what you're trying to achieve. The second thing I want to throw out there too is have fear, but don't doubt. If fear is natural, it's flight and fight. Your body is supposed to do that. They're supposed to have you fight or flight. You're supposed to have a sense of fear, but do not doubt yourself. Now that's humanistic, you doubting yourself. So ensure that the man next to you that has a position you should have in order to get paid the same way does not doubt himself. So ensure you don't do as well. So those are my two major advices for everyone in the room.
I mean, wow, what you say to that is just powerful and absolutely correct. Like that's yes. Yes is all I can say. And then Dana, this does get hard. I know I keep coming to you. It gets harder and harder once everyone has said it, but you've obviously shared some fantastic stories and some really inspirational stuff. So from your point of view, what was there any key professional advice anyone gave you, or kind of what was that biggest learning opportunity for you? And apologies that it does get harder.
No, I would say, I mean, this is kind of following what Stacey just said on the like fear and the doubt. I had an opportunity when I was going through like a transition in my company, switching from agency to consulting, where I was trying to like figure out what I was doing because I was getting really burnt out. And an opportunity presented itself. I'd never worked in entertainment in the sense of I got asked to be a digital producer on American Idol. And I was like, wow, I don't know how the heck to do that. And it was, my advice would be kind of go with your gut. There have been experiences and offers to me that have made me literally like, you can feel it in your body where you go backwards and you're like, I don't know. And then there's times where you're like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I'm jumping like straight in. So that was one where I was like, oh yeah, this is exciting. This sounds really cool. I don't know what in the world to do or how to work on a television show or a production team, but I'm going to figure it out. And so I would say that your fear kind of fuels creativity almost. And yeah, I would just say listen to your like visceral gut reactions on decisions.
I love that. That's really, really powerful. And also, can I just say, I love this women supporting women attitude in terms of everyone's clapping, everyone's doing a little heart. And it's just fantastic to be in a room of women, even in a virtual room where there's so much love and support for each other and kind of cheerleading everyone's kind of achievements, which is great. And Puff, as a roundup, like kind of that key piece of professional advice. I know it's the hardest, I'm sorry, or biggest learning opportunity, but come on, Puff.
So look, it's me. Anyone that knows me knows, and I'll always harp on about it, but the power of your network. Okay. When you're building your network, make sure that you're building these deep, long-term relationships with people. I still speak to people now that, you know, I worked with 20 odd years ago, and I'm like, honestly, the kind of opportunities that come up just because I have prioritized and focused on my network. And I would actively encourage each and every one of you to make sure that you are nurturing your network and really understand the power that is in your current and hopefully future network. So don't underestimate the power of your network would be my one piece of professional advice that was given to me many years ago and I'm sharing today. But I'm very aware we're running on. So, Gabby, I'm going to hand over the baton to you.
I know. So just one last one was just any good resources or books that you would recommend to women in the industry. So I'm just going to, Dana, I know you mentioned one that we might need to kind of re-say, but if anyone else has any, I'm just going to say shout now kind of thing.
The good is the new cool. Dana, share the book.
The book. That's true. The book is awesome. Yeah.
Brilliant. So look, I'm going to say to everyone that's joined us, like, thank you for joining and listening to this conversation, but massive thank you to all of our panelists, because this has just been such an incredibly like open and personal kind of sharing of experiences. And I hope we've inspired people to kind of do the same. But also what I would say is, you know, do reach out if you want to kind of hear anything. I'm sure the panelists would answer LinkedIn messages. Certainly Puff and I would share our experiences with you. Don't be afraid. We've said be brave, be bold, like all of those kind of wonderful things that have come out of today's session. So hopefully there's some inspiration there to do the brilliant things that some of our panelists are doing now. So thank you all so much for joining us today. It's been a real honor to speak to you all. There is, for everyone joining us at home, a little feedback section, which is on the right-hand corner. We would absolutely love to hear how you found today, what your experiences were. We love putting on these Tech for Good talks. If you've got ideas for future sessions, anything you can share, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings. Otherwise, just a massive thank you for joining us today. We will be sharing information about upcoming events with everyone after this event has ended. So please keep an eye out for that. And just one last massive thank you to all the inspirational women that have been on our panel today. And thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to staying in touch with you all. And bye, everyone.